Tonight on God Bless America 34, are Cenk Uygur and Hasan Piker unwittingly harming the Democrat Party? I will explain why these two radicals pushing the Democrats to the left is the exact thing the Republicans need during desperate times. Plus, we will analyze why the establishment Democrats chose today as the tipping point for Piker to come out en masse against him, and frankly, why Hasan Piker is the surrogate from hell. Will they be able to distance themselves in time to mitigate the damage done by Hasan Piker? And also, do the Democrats have a platform for 2028 aside from locking up their enemies, aka lock him up? And examining the impact of Trump's Supreme Court victory, limiting the amount of mail-in ballots. You know I'll have an opinion on that. Revisiting why Californians are saying, "Don't tread on me" when it comes to tires. Finally, we will review Trump's economic D-Day on Iran. Will it crush Iran's economy, the global financial system, or is it just clever branding of what we're already doing to Iran? Well, we're going to discuss all of that tonight on God Bless America. I am your humble host, Eric Abbenante, here on August 25th, 2026, a Tuesday. And oh man, I have so much to get into. We are starting late today because I had some stand-up to do. And if you don't know how stand-up shows work, afterwards I have to do as much meet and greet with the adoring audience, the fans, as is necessary, and I can't really rush these people who paid to watch the performers. Can't really rush them. So tried to be as thorough as I could with that. And then today is a somber day, frankly, for me. Today is the anniversary of my grandma's passing from cancer. She is and was my biggest cheerleader aside from my parents, my sister, etc. But even within my family, she was always believed in me and envisioned everything that I'm doing, plus all the stuff that I will be doing. So I love you, Grandma. And yes, it is always tough during this time of year, but I always make sure to live my life to the fullest, just the way my great-grandma would have lived. She isn't my great-grandma. She is a fantastic grandmother. So, okay. So today we have a lot to get into, but our feature story is ultimately on Hasan Piker. And not to toot my own horn, pat myself on the back, but I've been warning about this problem, and I've been warning of this day for the Democrats when they were going to have to disavow the cancer that is Hasan Piker. Now, for the uninitiated, let's catch you up. So in the Democrat Party currently, there is a significant civil war occurring. And that civil war you're seeing play out and manifest in various ways. Now, to be fair, there is a civil war on the Republican side that we have been covering as well, but it is not as acute. It is not happening as intensely as the Democrat side. So on the Republican side, you have the Rubio versus J.D. Vance civil war, who is going to be the heir apparent to Donald Trump and the MAGA movement post-Trump. And it's getting a little boring on that Republican side. It seems like Marco Rubio is cleaning up. And so J.D. Vance has quite the uphill climb in that arena. Now, I'm rooting for a substantive debate in the party, but it looks like Marco Rubio, not that he's going to be coronated like Kamala, but he seems to be earning it, and That is why the Republican Civil War is just not as juicy at the moment. I will keep you updated anytime there is something interesting. But at the moment, a little bit of a snooze, frankly, whereas the Democrats' Civil War, ooh, baby, it is juicy, and it is only getting juicier. And the Democrats' Civil War, I have been previewing a lot of the doomers, the Israel-obsessed. They are not noticing the cracks in the Democrat side. They are so obsessed with critiquing Trump and the Iran war and Israel that they are not noticing that, yes, Trump has significant headwinds, and same with all the Republicans who are running essentially under the Trump banner with the Trump endorsement. But in this scenario, it should be a clean sweep for the Democrats, right? Well, not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say, because in the end, the Democrats, they have somehow equaled Trump's and the Republican Party's negatives. Could you imagine? Like, how did they do this? How is it possible that they are actually equating the negatives of a guy who is being accused of being involved with the world's most infamous pedophile ring? Okay, that's the accusation. And within that time period of all the drama of Epstein, Democrats didn't gain 1 percentage point. Not one. Why is that? Well, but part of it is what we're going to get into later, which is they do not have a reasonable alternative. They don't have a platform. They just have anti-Trump. And ironically, as we will get into later, they have the equivalent of what Trump was saying about Hillary Clinton, lock her up. And Trump, in his maturity, frankly, he was able to pivot from lock her up to, no, we're going to move on. We are going to try and actually help you people. The lock her up chant was fun, and I won't apologize for it, but we're going to move forward. Now, I don't think the Democrats have that same level of maturity. I think that they are truly running on a platform of, we're going to lock him up. And because they haven't had a reasonable alternative to the Republican side, because they have been just saying, we're going to lock him up, there was a gap opened, and you see this, if you don't fill the void, someone will fill that vacuum. And because of that, the Democrats have allowed the bad apples within their party, also known as the Democrat Socialists of America, they have allowed these people to fill that void. And what have they filled that void with? A hammer and a sickle. That is what they're filling it with. So the supposed blue wave has been interrupted by a red wave, a hammer and sickle coming right for you. So this is a major concern for the Democrat Party, is that are we going to be no longer the Democrat Party, but the Democrat Socialists of America Party? And you would think, well, the energy is all in the Democrat Socialists. What's the big deal? Well, I have described the Democrat Socialists of America as the Blue Tea Party. If you remember the Tea Party, they were excellent in primaries and then flailed in the general elections, sometimes getting smoked. Now, it's not that the Tea Party was a complete waste. In fact, without the Tea Party, I dare say, you don't have Trump. So there were actually positives to the Tea Party movement, but they didn't have the same level of rhetoric and policy positions that you could brand the entire party upon. you had little cute things like Christine O'Donnell, I'm a witch, right? And those were fun and easy to make fun of at the time. But the policy positions were not so odious that it would stink up the whole tent. But Democrats, with their new big tent philosophy, after they had kicked everyone out with a divergent opinion, including those of you in the audience who decided, no, I'm not going to get an experimental injection, and I'm not going to stand an arbitrary 6 feet from another person until I see the science behind it. Well, you were kicked out and called a bigot for your terrible viewpoints, even though you were correct. Now, the Democrats are like, all right, let's create a big tent. Now, who did they start the big tent with? You would think it would be those reasonable people that they kicked out. No. Who they are letting into the tent after they had just kicked out everybody and now they want a big tent, who they're letting into the tent are socialists and communists. And these socialists and communists have such bad ideas that you can brand the entire party negatively just from a few bad apples. That's how bad these apples are. You take one bite, ugh, there's worms in there. Commie worms. They're trying to redistribute the wealth of this apple across the worm network. There's a lot of influencers who have wormed their way into prominent positions within the Democrat Party, including Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur. Now, are these people, do they care about the Democrat Party, or do they care about themselves and propping up their own position and using the carcass of the Democrat Party to stand upon? Because Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur, the two Turkish nationals who happen to be in America, these two are taking over the Democrat Party. Not inch by inch, but mile by mile. And because they have taken over the Democrat Party is being branded by them. And as we've talked about many times on this show, the polling shows that if you want to win, right or left, you want to do what? Move to the center. Well, Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur are so radical that they're pushing the party way off screen. That's how far left they are. And in the end, you have seen this play out, this dynamic that I'm describing about Hasan and Cenk pushing the Democrat Party to the left. You're seeing this play out in a race with Abdul El-Sayed versus Republican Mike Rogers in Michigan. And you could have seen it in Wisconsin, except for the fact that Francesca Hong, who was supposed to win the primary, probably got rigged out of her election. Now, you're not allowed to say that, and maybe it's allegedly for the censors, but it sure looked suspicious. And as we have talked about many times, it doesn't really matter what actually happened. Optically, it looked like they stuck a shiv right in Francesca Hong's back. Because at least in Wisconsin, the Democrat Party understood, oh, we will certainly lose the general election if this woman wins the primary. And so they chose a much more moderate Democrat in David Crowley, who ended up taking the torch and made it a lot harder for Republicans to win that state. Now, I still suspect that they will, But Tom Tiffany has a much higher hill to climb because now he doesn't have one of these kooky socialists to go up against. He's going up against an actual politician who can trade arguments without touching the hammer and sickle. So if you look at Abdul El-Sayed, he was supposed to be, he defeated a woman by the name of Haley Stevens. Now, Haley Stevens, she has her own wild viewpoints on multiple things, including Israel. She, in my opinion, was too far on the Israel representation, but she had defeated 4 Republicans in a row. You think Republicans would rather face someone who has defeated 4 Republicans in a row as a Democrat, or do you want to face the guy who has every crazy position under the sun and then is campaigning with a surrogate who has even more crazy positions? Who do I want to go against? Now, this pairing of Abdul El-Sayed and Hasan Piker has been such a potent combination that the rest of the party is being branded communist just because of these 2 individuals. And certainly they are not the only 2. And for those of you in the audience who are following the talking points on Abdul El-Sayed, well, the media says that he's not a socialist. Therefore, he's not a socialist. Well, I showed you a great clip. Great clips should sponsor me because that's all I do is show you great clips. Now, on this one, it was Democrat strategist Liz Smith. And Democrat strategist Liz Smith was asked by Katie Couric, not in a gotcha moment like with Sarah Palin, just a real actual interview. Katie Couric asked Liz Smith, what's the difference between Abdul El-Sayed and a socialist? And she said, essentially, the label, that's it, because he takes the positions of the Democrat socialists. He has fundraised for them. He has campaigned with them, especially in the 2018 to 2020 era. There's a lot of interaction between him, Abdul El-Sayed, and the Democrat Socialist America, but he doesn't have the label. So he's a socialist by any other name. It's a distinction without a difference, frankly. So that's what you have within the candidate. Now, you certainly don't want him to associate with anyone insane, right? Well, that's where Hasan Piker comes in. And Hasan Piker is even more problematic than Abdul El-Sayed because Abdul El-Sayed only has so much tape from his past and so much statements that you can review. And he removed 100 videos before the campaign started, and he was still littered with controversy. Now, you have Hasan Piker, who streams for multiple hours a day. He's even more intense than this show, where I will give you a couple hours a day every single day of the week, and I will have an announcement about that at the end of the show. But he has almost unlimited amount of footage that you can review. And we'll go over it every single episode. Like, for instance, just today, I quickly found Hasan Piker saying that ICE is the equivalent of the Gestapo. And I gotta say, it is, yeah, because the Gestapo, their whole job was getting rid of pedophiles and cartel leaders and criminals and murderers, right? No. That was not the Gestapo's job. They were the murderers. They were the cartel leaders. They were the pedophiles. So it is a complete inversion and subversion of reality. what Hasan Piker was trying to say about ICE. And it is not going to play well. One of the only things that Trump has going for him currently, if you just look at the polls, don't get upset if you are a Trump fan in the audience. We're just going by numbers. And by numbers, it hasn't been a great second term, but immigration is one of the feathers in his cap. In fact, you could dare say that if gas is struggling, that would be the only consistent feather in his cap across this term. No matter what, he's been A+ on preventing immigration, stymieing the flow. And then when it comes to deportations, you'll give him a different grade than an A+. But if you grade on a curve, understanding the amount of lawfare, the judicial shenanigans that are going on against Trump, you might give him a better grade than average for that. So ultimately, immigration is one of Trump's strong suits. And for Hasan Piker and for Abdul el-Sayed to go after ICE like this is a fool's errand. Now, in addition to that, Hasan, and you could say you're cherry picking all this stuff with Hasan, and Hasan is his own man and Abdul el-Sayed is his own man. Well, that would be a fair argument, except for the fact that most of these controversial statements that you are seeing from Hasan Piker are echoed by Abdul el-Sayed. So Abdul el-Sayed, he can't create distance from him and Hasan Piker when he's saying the exact same thing as Hasan Piker. Now, we'll review these clips, but part of what I am referring to is one of the biggest controversies is saying that Hasan Piker said that America deserved 9/11. And then you have Abdul el-Sayed right here saying that the U.S. should be blamed for creating terrorism. And when the synagogue in Michigan was attacked, he had said that hurt people hurt people. So Abdul el-Sayed is in a pickle that he and Hasan Piker created for him. Now, Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur, and if you don't know, so Cenk Uygur is the head of the Young Turks. The Young Turks was the first YouTube partner, meaning the first to get monetized on YouTube. And so Cenk Uygur has been running the Young Turks for, God, it must be at least a dozen years now. And Hasan Piker, and actually might be close to 2 decades at this point, maybe closer to 2 decades than a dozen years. But Hasan Piker was on the network, and that's where he got his big break, was from his uncle. And so those two are inextricably linked. And now it looks like Hasan Piker and Abdul el-Sayed are inextricably linked. And just today, the Democrat Party seemingly put out a memo across the board saying, you need to distance yourself from Hasan Piker. We need to stop with letting Hasan Piker continually putting his feet in his mouth and having that reflect on the Democrat Party. The issue with that is that a surrogate like Hasan Piker is a cancer. And I don't say that lightly. What I'm saying is that he is like an inoperable tumor. If you try and remove Hasan Piker, you might kill the patient. And the patient is Abdul el-Sayed. And obviously, all of this is metaphorical. Okay, Media Matters, who tried to get Steve Bannon in trouble for saying the phrase head on Pike when it referred to Fauci. Oh, wait, they actually did get Steve Bannon into trouble for just that phrase. So this is all metaphorical, but Hasan Piker is essentially the inoperable tumor of surrogates, because even when you try and distance yourself from him, no, he will double down and really damage your campaign. Now, it's not just me saying this. It's not just me been saying this. Here is an example of what I've been saying. And this is just devastating for those who are trying to depict Hasan Piker as a reasonable candidate and a reasonable surrogate for a candidate, because he is just continually putting his foot in his mouth.
There are going to be a lot of people who are already questioning Abdul al-Sayed's sincerity on these issues, that will then turn around and say, he's moderating his position on Israel, all this stuff. I don't think he is. Okay, I will say this. I am literally the person that is being dangled, and I'm going to tell you once again, he's not moderating on his perspective on Israel or anything like that. Okay, his reaction to this has always been very good, which is, look, I deal with people that I don't fully agree with and don't fully subscribe to on a daily basis. This is politics. Politics is about addition, not subtraction, right? It's smart.
Politics is about addition, not subtraction, right? Well, says the person who repels more people than he appeals to, Mr. Hasan Piker. And it is funny that he says he understands that concept of addition more than subtraction, except for the fact that when you've seen his effect on the campaign, clearly the Democrat establishment has determined that he subtracts more than he adds.
It's the right way to deal with it, and then deflect back to the issues, because they are the ones who are engaging in the deflection. Okay? There are going to be a lot of people who are...
Imagine you tried to distance yourself from an inoperable tumor, and the tumor is like, no, we're together. In fact, he's trying to quote unquote moderate. He's just saying that for the press. If you are within Abdul al-Sayed's campaign, you're tearing your hair out right now. You are absolutely furious that this kid continues to be selfish. Hasan Piker has continued to put his own platform and his gain over the Democrat Party. And if you are a Republican in the audience, please send a fruit basket to your local DSA member, particularly Hasan Piker and or Cenk Uygur. They need these fruits, and these basket cases need a fruit basket for all the work that they are doing for the Republican Party.
Already,
it is just a remarkable thing. Now, there were numerous Democrats today who came out and rebuked Mr. Piker. And apologies on this one, labeled the wrong Hakeem Jeffries clip. Oh, crap. Where is it? It's here. I know it's here. There it is. So down here is Hakeem Jeffries. I mislabeled the first one as that. This is the lock him up clip. So I got that incorrect in terms of labeling these clips. But here is Hakeem Jeffries rebuking Mr. Piker.
On another important issue, Leader Jeffries, you issued a statement yesterday slamming what you called the malicious claim that American Jews are inviting violence against themselves as, quote, dangerous and anti-Semitic. Was that in reference to far-left influencer Hasan Piker and his recent very controversial comments?
Yes, those comments were dangerous, malicious, and anti-Semitic and should not be tolerated by anyone in the public square. What we've seen is a startling rise of hate crimes all across the United States of America, but particularly in this moment directed against our Jewish brothers and sisters. And everybody, regardless of ideological perspective, should be willing to denounce this rise of anti-Semitic rhetoric, hate crimes, and bigotry, and actually try to move us to a society where we embrace everyone, even where there are differences on issues, be they foreign or domestic. The notion that people should be targeted because of their religious beliefs or ethnicity or race, whatever the case may be, that's fundamentally inconsistent with who we are in this country.
Yes, indeed. Hasan Piker's clout among Democrats, though, particularly some younger Democratic voters, seems to be growing. We saw, for example, his prominence in the Michigan Senate Democratic primary. So why not call him out by name in your statement if you feel so passionately about this issue?
I've just addressed Hasan Piker's comments as it relates to the Jewish community as forcefully as I can, and I will continue to do that.
Yes, but in your original statement, he was not addressed by name. That's why I was raising the question. Leader Jeffries, you want to give me a final thought before I let you go? And we're grateful to you for joining us.
What a weak leader. I must say, I get why Democrats want to get rid of his ass, because he is just the epitome of the status quo. Okay, so I didn't want to bring this up, but look at this Goomba right here. He is dressed in all green. He heard, hey, Mr. Speaker Jeffries, the ladies love Luigi in New York. And he was like, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to dress up just like Luigi. And he got the wrong Luigi. Wah, wah, wahoo! He got that Luigi. Mario. Yeah, he's got a mansion. And he looks like Luigi and a Goomba combined. But, oh my goodness. And no one from the Trump cartel getting a pass. Okay, yeah. We're really intimidated by your color coordination there, Mr. Speaker. Oh, my goodness. So, it seems like the hit went out on Mr. Hasan Piker, because you have Hakeem Jeffries with a tepid rebuke, I must say. If you can't even name Hasan Piker like he's Voldemort. My God. So, that was embarrassing. And then we have more disavowals. We have Rep. Hillary Scholten in Michigan. And she won't put her name on campaign literature with Abdul Sayed. And why? I have long said I will not campaign with someone who continues to associate with Hasan Piker. Now, this is something the Democrat Party should have seen coming. They have built a network of excommunication. Okay? You are kicked out of the tent if you have a divergent opinion in the Democrat Party. And now that same Frankenstein monster of saying, well, no, us cool kids, we eat here, and you are banished from the cool kids table. Well, now the cool kids are trying to take over the Democrat Party and push back against these communists trying to take over the Democrat Party. And I will say, if you're a Republican in the audience, you are rooting for the Cenk Uygurs and the Hasan Pikers to continue to wreak havoc and to change the reputation of the Democrat Party forever, to cede the party to these unserious people, these communists who don't have any idea what they're doing. And how do we know this? Well, DSA co-chair Megan Romer, when they were asked, so you want to tax billionaires and millionaires. What's the plan for that? She had no idea. So they are basically the dog who is chasing after the car, and they are actually getting close to catching the car. Do they have any idea what they're going to do with said car? Hell no. But they're actually very close to catching the car, and when they do, the Democrat Party will be changed forever. Again, so we have Democrat Josh Gottheimer saying he will not vote for Abdul el-Sayed. Wow. That's not just, oh, I won't campaign for him. No, I will not vote for him. I am rooting for Mike Rogers. So he is essentially a Democrat for Mike Rogers.
If you were a Michigan voter, how would you vote in the Senate race?
I just make it clear. There's no way I'm ever coming out for el-Sayed right now. And this is a guy who has made it very clear his views toward, and has refused to back off his views toward Jewish Americans. And I hope he comes out and clarifies where he is. I also hope that he does the right thing and condemns Hasan Piker clearly and the language very clearly.
If you were a Michigan.
And there's too many Hasan Piker statements to really categorize and list for you. But again, America deserved 9/11. Jews go back to Auschwitz. There are many, which is why I had said that I had two comparisons for Hasan Piker that people did not really like. First one was Charlie Kirk. Not saying he's like Charlie Kirk. I'm saying that I would have not wanted Hasan Piker to be shot like Charlie Kirk, and to be at that point when I was talking to my leftist friends, there wasn't really a good equivalent to Charlie Kirk on the left. The best comparison I could give to Charlie Kirk was Hasan Piker, because essentially that was the under 35 mover and shaker within the Democrat Party who was a male and had masculine traits and who could pull a crowd and draw a crowd. And you did see that recently with his events, one of which was an event mocking Charlie Kirk's death, making a song about the most prominent assassination of the 21st century. And yes, we were close to Donald Trump being that, and we are so glad that it didn't happen. But in the end, you have Hasan Piker, who I had told many leftists I would never want him shot, and I certainly would not celebrate his death the same way many on the left celebrated Charlie Kirk's death to this day, and that again includes Hasan Piker. But the other comparison that they don't like to hear is Hasan Piker is the left's Nick Fuentes. He says many objectionable things. But again, just like I've said about Fuentes, he should not be banned or censored. You should allow the sunlight, the best disinfectant, to take care of the situation rather than ban or censor him and then turn him into an online martyr, which will only increase his popularity. So Hasan Piker is quite objectionable. Now, do you have many on the right campaigning with our objectionable people? No. Aside from Trump with that one very brief meeting with Kanye West and Fuentes, where Fuentes essentially got both of them kicked out prematurely from that dinner. Aside from that very brief interaction, you don't see much of an equivalent on this. So there's that. And then, yes, there is more. There is still more. a former Bernie Sanders campaign staffer. Now, this is much more in the progressive camp, Bernie Sanders, so this is devastating because this isn't really establishment.
So, Joel, does it concern you when you see some of your leadership within the party or party elders say, this is all a big tent? You know, I look at, there's some on the right. There's some on the right that want to be a part of the right. But I don't want to be a part of their tent. I won't vote for them. I won't campaign with them. I won't appear on stage with them.
Yeah, Lawrence, I don't want to be in the tent with the guys.
He is, of course, the gentleman on the left is referring to the Jew-hating wing of the Republican Party. And not that even going after Israel is necessarily a bad thing and that necessarily makes you a Jew hater, but it's the constant obsession, like literally everything is blamed upon Israel. Fires in Argentina, it's Israel. Migrants in Morocco overrun Kuwait, Spain, oh, it's Israel. And these were the same people, if you remember, who were trying to tell you in March of this year that Netanyahu is dead. Remember that? And now, and none of them apologized for the ridiculous statements of, oh, Netanyahu's dead, when he clearly wasn't. Oh, it's a fake AI video. That's proof that he's dead. These are the same people. So, not very serious people. And I believe his name is Lawrence Fox. Or no, Lawrence Jones on Fox. Anyways, I believe that is who Lawrence Jones was referring to.
Trying to kill me. You know, I am just not interested in that. And there are many.
And I did cut off his good line. He was saying, I don't want someone in the tent who wants to kill me.
Very strongly pro-peace, pro-Palestinian people who belong in that tent. But Hasan Piker, he's trafficking in hate speech.
So, Joel,
and the equivalent on the left of everything is the Jews' fault, actually you see in a more intense fashion than even on the right. And I must say, going out to do stand-up, and especially when you meet anyone under 30, there is a hyperfixation on the Jews. And it is remarkable how many people I have met after doing meet and greets with stand-up who will, out of nowhere, because of my background, and the fact that I am cool and I am open to anybody, including those who abjectly hate me, I will talk to anybody. And even they will say, almost out of the blue, so what do you think about Israel killing Charlie Kirk? And how do I unpack that? How do I talk to these people with that? And I still want to I still want to have an open mind, and I still want to have discourse with them, but it is tough to talk to the Candace Owens wing of the Republican or Democrat Party, and you're seeing it on both sides, where again, it's always Israel. Everything is Israel's fault. And we're kind of reaching peak anti-Semitism in terms of how trendy, cool, and how much it is incentivized by society. We are going to reach a backlash because the pendulum has just swung too far. And again, it's healthy to have any discussion in the greatest nation on earth because we have this thing called free speech, and we should protect it with every fiber we have, because it is important to the republic and how we keep it. But that doesn't mean that I also, with my free speech, can't ridicule the inane nature inane and insane of these people who blame Israel on everything. Now, I gotta say, I actually like it. Makes me feel like I have superpowers, okay? I do everything. I control everything. The Jews run everything. I think that's great when you espouse that rhetoric, because it is sincerely empowering. I control the weather. I control the banks. I control the media. But it is also stifling so all these people control the media and I barely have control of my bank account. But it's sure, I do find it hilarious, actually. I don't push back on it. I just find it quite funny when you hear over and over, Jews did this, Jews did that. But you know what this is. A lack of satisfaction of your life, and then a feeling of lack of control. And you are then finding a locus of, oh, this is the cause of all the problems in the world. And then you feel like you are establishing control again. And I understand the rationale. I will talk to these people. Some of these people are my very good friends who have been my friends for a long time. And unlike the Democrat Party, who I can't tell you how many lifelong friends I lost due to politics over the last few years, and all of them were on the left. That's part of why my politics are shaped the way that they are, is pattern recognition. Understanding the pattern of, oh, the left has this major issue of kicking out someone in the tent who has a divergent opinion. And again, instead of inviting those people back into the tent, who are the first people you're bringing in and defending in this tent? Communists. Communists who hate this country and think that we deserve 9/11. That's the state that the Democrats are in. And very interestingly, again, listen to the effect of this thinking from Cenk Uygur and Hasan Piker via Mrs. Anna Kasparian, because you will see the effect of this Cenk Uygur, Hasan Piker rhetoric.
And why the establishment's never going to change, and why we're on a direct collision course here. And I don't know what's going to happen with the country, because it is so highly coordinated. Josh Gottheimer also attacking and using the same exact talking point. Hillary Scholten, a so-called Democrat from Michigan, using the same exact talking point. And
so at the end of the show, I always respond to your comments. And Katie Yonke, or Katie Yonk, I apologize if I got that wrong, but Katie made a great point. She was saying that Chuck Schumer also made a statement about Hasan Piker. So the leadership of the Democrat Party has very firmly established their stance on Hasan Piker. And it all happened today. Very interesting coincidence. Too many coincidences for me. I believe there was a memo put out. And again, thank you to Katie Yonke. We'll review all the comments afterward. We haven't got really any chat yet. I'm looking for the first chat, but I review all the comments on X, YouTube, etc. So we will get to all those.
It doesn't matter. I can keep going and going and going.
Okay, so pause.
Hold on.
Okay.
Dozens of media figures, dozens of politicians, by the way, Democrats, all attacking Democratic candidates because of their connection to Hasan, and this disingenuous quote, as if Hasan meant to hurt Jews when he was saying, let's protect Jewish Americans. All of them know that that's a lie.
So, God, Hasan Piker said so many objectionable things. It is actually hard to catalog and list all of them. So we've been fixating on his comments where he said America deserved 9/11. He did tell some Jews, go back to Auschwitz. He attacked some black people on his stream saying, oh, why aren't you caring about black people's focus on this, or black people support that? And then he just went off on, who cares about what black people think? And then very recently, he said that if Jews do not speak out against Israel, that soon there will be not just attacks on the pro-Israelis, but just American Jews in general. Because by extension and by the blood guilt, they will not be spared in the, I guess, pro-Palestinian mob that is going to run through this country if the Abdul El-Sayeds of the world are elected. So this is a major problem for the Democrat Party, and why I believe quite accurately portrayed Mr. Piker as the inoperable tumor of the Democrat Party. You try and remove Hasan Piker from the party, he will now try and kill the Democrat Party because he is the connection to this youth vote. And be careful what you wish for, Democrats. You made your bed. You're going to have to lie in it with this communist.
All of them have seen the full quote, and all of them are lying to you on purpose not to attack Hasan. And Anna, no one knows this better than I do, because remember when I ran for Congress in 2020, I was viciously attacked, totally lied about. It wasn't about me. It was because Bernie Sanders had endorsed me.
This is also revisionist history. No one talked about Cenk Uygur's presidential campaign. He would have killed for anyone to even attack him the way we're attacking Abdul El-Sayed. At least Abdul El-Sayed is going to get somewhere around 40 to 45% of the vote. He's going to do pretty decently compared to Cenk Uygur, who had zero traction. For Cenk Uygur to compare himself to Abdul El-Sayed is insulting to El-Sayed.
They do smear by proxy. So then they say, you see, Bernie's guilty, guilty, guilty. And they all did it in unison. CNN, New York Times, LA Times. There is coordinated strategy in this country to destroy any candidate that Israel opposes. And yes, that includes Jewish candidates like Bernie Sanders, who they despised. AIPAC absolutely despises Bernie and Abdul El-Sayed and everyone that Hasan has endorsed. So all of the Democrats, this vote blue no matter who Democrats, are now saying, do not vote for our party. Do not vote for our candidates.
Don't worry, I won't. I think the Democratic establishment is scum. Honestly, I'm so black-pilled on Democrats at this point. I am not invested. I think you guys can tell. I don't really cover the races. I don't care. I don't care. Because the Democratic Party is so far gone and so delusional.
Apologies, had another cat actually tank the audio, and of course all my concurrent viewers, goodbye. The life of streaming. We're gonna get better at this, folks. Sorry about that. I'm not gonna get rid of the cats. I'm not gonna euthanize them like I'm an Abdul El-Sayed, okay? I love cats and dogs, so even though they continually destroy my audio, I will eventually redo these wirings so they can't do that. But for now, we're just gonna have to live with our furry, four-legged little companions destroying my audio. But so if you heard the punchline of this, and let me play part of it because I'm not sure if when they killed my little kittens, when they killed my audio, that if you weren't able to hear this portion of the clip. So then they said, you see, this is an important part of the clip because you're going to hear Mr. Uygur just roast the Democrat Party, right? And this is what I was getting at, which is, do do these streamers, do they care about the party, or do they care about themselves and propping themselves up and using the party to, the kids would call it clout chase. God, I don't know if the kids say that even. I'm so old. No, I'm unk. I know that. I heard that today. I am learning Gen Z quickly. I made some Gen Z friends in the audience. So I'm definitely unk because I'm so old. I know that. I don't know if the kids are saying clout chase anymore, or if that's already expired. But essentially, that the Cenk Uygur and Hasan Piker, are they using Abdul el-Sayed so that they can further their profile rather than help the Democrat Party gain power and consolidate away from the Republican Party, which is what they espouse that they're doing?
Saeed and everyone that Hasan has endorsed. So all of the Democrats, this vote blue no matter who Democrats, are now saying, do not vote for our party. Do not vote for our candidates.
Don't worry, I won't. I think the Democratic establishment is scum. Honestly.
Oh, keep going, Anna. So hot.
I'm so black-pilled on Democrats at this point. I am not invested. I think you guys can tell. I don't really cover the races. I don't care. I don't care because the Democratic Party is so far gone and so delusional.
I mean, you know, for a lot of Republicans, you could take her words, put it behind some Barry White music, and then there you go. That is as delicious as you can get. Yep, the Democrat Party is scum. Don't vote for our party. Don't worry, I won't. Democrat Party is so far gone and delusional. So that's the ultimate effect of Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur campaigning for you, is you are going to get stabbed in the back. And if you try to distance yourself from the crazy comments of said surrogates, don't worry, they will attach you to them and say, oh, they don't even mean what they're saying. By the way, that's just what you want, is someone like Hasan Piker being like, yeah, Abdul el-Sayed, he's just lying so that he can trick you suckers into voting for him. Yeah, that's exactly what you want if you're running a campaign. So I would dare say that Abdul el-Sayed has as big of a challenge as you could face as a candidate. And what is that challenge? It's Hasan Piker. It's Cenk Uygur. Good luck outrunning that. And as our great commenter Katie Yonke had said, this was just the tip of the iceberg of all the people who had disavowed Mr. Piker, including Chuck Schumer. So just a lot. It was hard to keep up with today. How many? And again, when I'm doing stand-up, can't follow all the developments. But yeah, so now here is the comment that I was referring to earlier of, you had Hasan Piker say that America deserved 9/11, and now you have Abdul el-Sayed who's trying to distance himself, except for the fact that, well, the issue is Abdul el-Sayed has echoed said statements. Now, this is from Bobby LaValle, a great clipper you should all support, doing what I used to do quite frequently until I was demonetized for critiquing Elon too much. So here is Mr. el-Sayed saying pretty much the carbon copy of a parallel track to Mr. Piker's America Deserved 9/11.
I think the approach that we've often taken to terrorism has been to figure out how to leverage the might of the U.S. military to go.
By the way, can anyone get him some fitting clothes instead of just wearing every shirt you can find from the Baby Gap so that you can highlight your lack of shoulders? I mean, okay, we get it. You have bulked up with your biceps, but my God, you just still look like a broken refrigerator.
In and root out, right, certain terrorist organizations, etc. And where that's necessary, that's necessary. But I also think we need to be curious about why those things happen in the first place? Like, what drives somebody to want to commit such a heinous act? Like, I have to be a student of people's pain. Like, that's what I did in medicine. That's what I try to do in politics. Like, what?
I'm not sure if we're going to have time to get into this, but he had a disastrous interview with Jesse Waters, and there were so many clips. I give Mr. Syed credit for going on into the lion's den, so to speak, just like many Republicans go on CNN and MS Now. But you got to actually use that time to put forth a message. You don't want to create more clips for your opponent. So that was the one issue. I will say, I remember Pete Buttigieg, Mr. polls 0% with black people, that same Pete Buttigieg, he had a couple good moments on Fox News where I was impressed with how he was able to retort and go back with the hosts. This guy is a little more in the bluster category. He's a doctor who can't even tell you the difference between circumcision and genital mutilation. Okay? Not the best doctor.
What happens when people are in pain? And I think that part of what we have to understand is that sometimes when we move, we create so much collateral damage because too often we have been on the wrong side of our own policies.
Right.
That's not.
Okay, so we've done a lot on Mr. El Sayed, and you get it. He's got major headwinds that he's creating for himself. He has this inoperable tumor named Hasan Piker. If you remove him, you will kill the patient. And okay, let's see if I can remember all the crazy things that Mr. El Sayed has said. Let's get rid of Mr. Piker. You know, let's let this man speak for himself. Well, Mr. Abdul El Sayed has said that he hates guns, he hates July the 4th, he hates fireworks, he hates football, and has compared that to racism and slavery. And then he hates Mackinac Island, the vacation area in Michigan. There are so many things that even I'm struggling to remember that he has said that has just continually procured more trouble for Mr. Syed. And he walked into a bunch of them. And during this Waters interview, including an echoing of his Second Amendment statement, this was not a good moment for him. And then again, at one point asking Mr. Waters, "Are you circumcised?" and thinking that it was quite the gotcha to compare circumcision to genital mutilation, when in reality, one has a positive effect in terms of penile cancer and other things, and then the other has no positive effect and is irreversible in the way that is, you're not really gonna have genitals afterward. You're gonna have a open wound. So, long story short, this was a devastating, and this guy is full of garbage, scary. I agree, unless you're talking about me, the weather cloud. But hey, there is potential that he could be talking about. He's not following me. But hopefully he is talking about Abdul El Sayed or Hasan Piker. And in that case, I agree with you, sir. So, obviously, if you think I'm garbage, I don't agree. So, okay. We have a lot to get into. We've already hit an hour. I did an hour on Mr. Piker, Mr. Uygur, and Abdul El Sayed. Wow. Well, a lot did happen today with all three. Now, before we get into the tire story, which did get a fair amount of traction. Thank you all for commenting on that video and watching it. Appreciate that. And we have some California wildfire discussion to get into. Let's get into this Supreme Court news. Oh, here's a quick hitter. Let's do this quick hitter first. This is Donald Trump issuing a major warning to American schools.
They stopped it. Every public school in America is now on notice that if they tell a child that they're trapped in the wrong body, they are committing child abuse. And as we remove the far-left extremism from the classroom, we're taking historic action to ensure that every child in America has access to a first-class education.
Now, Abdul Sayed, he thinks that circumcision is child abuse, actually, and he thinks it's just as bad as what this is. Telling children that they are trapped in the wrong body. And it is hard to follow the logic of the trans community. And let me help you with this. So, first off, I was told my entire life that gays were born this way. Even a famous, what's her name? Lady Gaga song, I was born this way. Very common refrain that you heard over and over. You think that they would choose this life? No, they were born this way. And then when you got to the trans people, now they're making the exact opposite argument. Oh, they were born trapped in the wrong body and they need to change. Well, which is it? Which is it? And this is part of why there is this growing movement of the LGB rejecting the T. Because if you think about it, there is really no relation of trans and the LGB. Because the traditional gays are over here saying we were born this way, and the trans are over here saying we were born the wrong way. And then you have a very specific culture over here of liking the same sex. Then you have a very different culture over here saying, no, we actually need to change our sex so that we can continue liking usually the opposite sex. Now, there's a lot of variation to that, but the T and the LGB, they are disparate, if not opposite. And this is the reckoning that community will have to go through is, are we going to follow the logic of the LGB, or are we going to completely invert that with the T? And so it is tough to follow, and they are ideologically inconsistent. Now, let's get to a story that you know I love, and that is mail-in balloting being limited thanks to a Supreme Court case. This is quite exciting for me, the creator of American History of Voter Fraud, the first and only film to document the history of rigged elections in this country, only the documented ones, and over a 200-year span. So we've talked about this quite often on this show. The birthplace of mail-in voting in America is Minnesota. Minnesota is where you see a lot of wacky liberal ideas spawn, and part of it is because of the mail-in balloting history. And we'll get into that, but let's play this clip.
the president used primetime real estate, giving a speech talking about election insecurity here just a few weeks ago. Now this ruling from the Supreme Court. How do you feel about
Well,
this?
it's not an issue just because Trump is talking about it. Democrats spent the entire first term of the Trump presidency convincing people that Russia interfered in our election and somehow it wasn't unsafe. Poll after poll after poll over the last 8 years have shown that Americans, by and large, even bipartisan Americans.
Now, to buttress what Mr. Borelli is saying, I looked up every single documentary on voter fraud prior to making my own. I didn't watch all of them, but I wanted to be aware of everything in the sphere. One of them was a film called Kill Chain, which was prior to the Trump victory. There was many in 2016. There was a considerable concern from Democrats that there would be a foreign intervention in our elections in the form of machine tampering. Now, it is ironic that even I will tell you that the most upsetting thing I would say in these voter fraud discussions was that typically machine tampering is the most convoluted way to rig an election, whereas the election officials who control the election system, that would be the most direct and consistent way to rig an election. And how do we know this? Good election officials have warned about potential bad apples who could destroy all the work of the good apples. Sounds similar to what we were talking about with the DSA and the establishment Democrats. And the concern that there would be a rigged election went away after the 2020 election. Isn't that interesting? So with the 2020 election, if you were discussing voter fraud or rigged elections, it was taboo. And you were a bigot and a racist. And you were spreading disinformation because you dared believe what Democrats believed 5 minutes ago. This was quite the revisionist history from Democrats. And if you do not study history, if you don't pay attention to politics in the last 5 minutes, you wouldn't really understand that pattern emerged.
Feel that elections aren't as secure as they need to be. And no, you can't say that every mail-in ballot or every paper ballot is a fraudulent ballot. That's not true. But almost every time where you find validated cases of fraud, you are seeing it being done through some sort of paper ballot. So this is an issue that Trump has taken up. He campaigned on it. He vowed to do it. And now we're seeing some of the fruits of that.
Trump votes by mail.
There's no question about it. Look, and again, this is
now,
not
and he admits to it.
We have discussed this on this show because I review all of your comments at the end. And I got a comment from a very lovely woman who gave birth to me, my mother, who she had pointed this out. And I had more related this to the absentee ballots. Although I do admit that it is hypocritical for Trump. And if you remember in 2024, the Trump campaign embraced mail-in balloting. And I was out on a limb on the Republican side critiquing this rather than everyone falling in line, those who were against mail-in balloting. Now that Trump was for it, they were all for it. No, I stood on principle and said, no, my previous position still stands. It doesn't change that it could partially help the Republicans. You don't want to benefit from the system that ultimately could lead to your downfall. Now, in the end, they just went through with it. So that's where, in my opinion, the real hypocrisy lies. Whereas S.E. Cupp pointing out that he votes by mail is more akin to the absentee ballot at that point. Although I have said many times that it would behoove Mr. Trump to actually go and vote in person on election day to promote voting in person on election day. But it is somewhat understandable with the president, especially with how many assassination attempts have happened to him. It is understandable that he would vote more. He would vote more like the absentee, the overseas military, where again, that is akin to mail-in balloting, except your overseas military is never going to be more than 1% of the entire election, and it's gonna be tough to sway the election over that small of a vote total. But I see both sides of that one, and we had a fun little video discussing that, thanks to a comment from someone who gave birth to me.
This is not to eliminate all paper ballots. This is to make it more secure.
But the other thing is, too, there hasn't been any statistics that actually have shown, like...
Census Bureau came out this week saying that 24,000 non-citizens voted in American elections in 2020. So and that's the Census Bureau. That's not a Republican or right-wing, not exactly known to be a conservative organization. This is the Census Bureau saying 24,000 non-citizens voted in 2020.
Okay, Joe, just stick with me because I want to ask you something that we saw there for a moment. 3 years ago, President Trump flew to Fulton County, Georgia, and became the first U.S. president with a mugshot. There you see it right there. The official Republican account on X posted, quote, "They did everything they could to stop him, and they failed." Now, while the official account for Trump's political operation posted, "Let this be a lesson to every American. When your back is against the wall and life gets rough, you must never surrender." Is that something the Republican Party should be celebrating?
This was supposed to sink Donald Trump. Instead, it resurrected him. If you think about where we were when this happened, Trump was not winning in any poll, right? You had this thing come out. It was supposed to be humiliating, and it ended up serving as a rallying cry for a lot of Republicans. Now you combine that with what we just heard from Michael Cohen, with the J6 case against Trump collapsing, with the Manhattan document case collapsing. It gives a lot of runway to what Republicans and what Trump has made the case of, that there's lawfare against him. That's what that picture symbolizes, and that's what led him to win re-election.
Chris, I see.
Okay, so he was talking about non-citizen voting, and I figured I would grab as many clips as I could about non-citizen voting that I have. I can't find the Arizona one, unfortunately, because the search system is just garbage on X, and that would be something that would behoove Mr. Nikita Beer of changing. But here's one where Kristen Welker admits that non-citizens vote in U.S. elections.
I want to turn...
And we'll see if I can find the Arizona one, because that one's gold.
Now to something that's getting a lot of attention, efforts to prevent non-citizens from voting. We should note that it's exceedingly rare, and yet some officials believe it's an urgent matter.
Now, this was quite important because if you remember, the Overton window on non-citizen voting has shifted within my lifetime quite rapidly. At first, it was, there are none, zero. You will never, ever, ever find a case of non-citizen voting. And then when it happened, they were like, okay, sure, it happens, but it's infinitesimal. It will never, ever, ever be of a significant margin. And then soon you found out, oh, well, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands. And he will say, okay, it happens, but it won't sway the election. And then soon it will be, yeah, well, we're going to win the election because we have more non-citizens voting for us than voting for you. Now, to buttress that point I just made, here is CNN admitting in, when is this? October 30th, 2024, that Democrats actually benefit from non-citizen voting, and that this was a win for Republicans, that removing non-citizens from the voter rolls in Virginia, it was a win. Because, yes, one party disproportionately benefits from the system over the other.
Breaking news now. The Supreme Court is allowing Virginia to purge suspected non-citizen voter registrations. This is a big decision from the Supreme Court. Just came in moments ago. I want to go straight to CNN's Paula Reed. Paula, what can you tell us?
Jim, this is incredibly significant because this is one of the court's first significant decisions ahead of next week's election. Here, they are allowing the state of Virginia to continue with a program that will purge suspected non-citizens from its voter registration rolls. Now, this is a bit of a surprise because the trial court and the appellate court sided with the Biden administration that objected to this purge, saying that the state cannot, under federal law, remove large groups of people from the voter rolls within 90 days of an election, though there is nothing stopping them from investigating individual voters and removing them from the voter rolls. Now, former President Trump has seized on this issue in Virginia, as have other Republicans, as a way that they should be able to remove suspected non-citizens, calling it sort of a common sense move. And here, a court divided across partisan lines, siding with Republicans. Now, Governor Youngkin.
Did you catch that, of how she is trying to frame Trump's absolutely common sense statement as a partisan screed of, he thinks that it's common sense for non-citizens to be removed from the voter rolls. Yeah, it is common sense, actually, that you need to be a citizen of said country to vote in said country. So, just ridiculous. And, okay, I think, yes. Okay, cool. So, here's the Arizona clip I was telling you about. Oh, okay. Now, oh my goodness. I misremember the number on this one bad. I keep saying like 70,000. No. 218,000 Arizona voters were improperly recorded to have provided proof of citizenship. 218,000 non-citizens in one state. So let's review the chain of events here, the shifting of the Overton window on non-citizen voting. At first, no one does it. Then it was, it's an infinitesimal number. Now, okay, sure, there are people doing it, but there are non-citizens voting, but it's not going to sway an election, and it's definitely not more than a couple thousand. Well, now we got hundreds of thousands of non-citizens voting in one state.
Concerns that is spiraling out there, conspiracy theories, is this notion that non-citizens may vote in robust numbers in this election. And I want you to clear up something that's happened in Arizona. At least 218,000 Arizona voters were improperly recorded to have provided proof of citizenship. But this has to do with longtime residents who received their driver's licenses in Arizona before there were citizenship requirements to do so. The Arizona Supreme Court has ruled that these individuals can all vote. So explain how you're going to combat this notion that 218,000 non-citizens are voting in Arizona's election.
I think it will be challenging, and it won't surprise me if this crops up after the election, no matter.
218,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. Now, it's not like non-citizens can run an election commission, right? Well, you've never been to San Francisco, because Kelly Wong was the first non-citizen to be appointed to San Francisco's Elections Commission, and here's her victory speech.
咁就其實喺2年前我嚟到三藩市嘅時候咧，咁我就認識咗好多原來三藩市有好多嘅權利㗎喎，好多權利係好多非公民啊、移民咧都可以享有㗎。
And thank God they had these subtitles at the bottom, or else I would be screwed. these subtitles are quite illuminating.
包括咧，就算你唔係公民咧，都可以咧去做委員，去影響政策嘅。好多時其實我哋華裔啦，或者亞裔嘅聲音咧都比較薄弱。咁咧特別係識講中文或者其他語言嘅人咧，更加少咧係有個代表性嘅喺個議會上面。所以我覺得亦都因為咁咧，我就覺得我好想代表我哋移民嘅聲音。其實我哋都有一樣。
Okay, that you've got enough of her victory speech. So, yes, and if you go to this thread, many examples of non-citizen voting within that thread. So, oh my goodness. So we still have to cover Trump's economic D-Day.
The president used prime time.
And I still have to answer your questions as well. So, because of all that, I might have to skip the Ashley Zaval. You should follow Ashley Zaval, real reporting on California, and the tire situation is fascinating in California, but we'll get to that in another episode because I still have to cover the Iran and economic D-Day, and it is well past midnight, getting close to 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. So let's go to Trump's economic D-Day. Is this going to be is this going to actually stifle Iran to the point where their economy collapses? Are we just blustering and we're actually not going to do anything substantive like sanction China? Or is this going to be a hatchet rather than a scalpel, and then you end up harming the global economic system by trying to go after Iran? Well, let's get into it. This is a gentleman in Iranian who is telling you that this is the 5th gas station he has gone to, and he is about to run out of gas, searching for gas.
5 دقیقه که تو صف پمپ بنزین وایسادیم، توی صف طولانی چراغ بنزینم آقا روشن، ماشینم واقعا دیگه راه نمیره. خیلی شیک گذاشتن جلو پمپ بنزین اینا رو آقا.
Now, this is partially because of our economic D-Day, but also Iran's inflation has increased dramatically. And because of that, Iran, at this point, it takes 2 million rial, 2 million, to get to $1. That is a lot. So we go to the map every single episode. Now, the United Arab Emirates has actually participated in said economic D-Day. They are participating in an economic embargo, or they are not at all going to cooperate with Iran. And if you read up, or United Arab Emirates is considered the lifeblood of the Iranian economy. Some would even say that they are essentially the air providing oxygen to the lungs of Iran. Many describe the UAE that way. But in reality, it's all about China. If you do not sanction China, then the vast majority of Iran's wealth is still not being sanctioned, and therefore not much is really happening on this topic. So, and I don't even get to, so also Syria, we're going to have to get into that in a little while, another time. But it is interesting with Syria. Look at how many of those bases in Syria are Turkish. Well, look at that. Oh my goodness. But we'll have to get into that in another time. But it just reminds you that, wow, look at this occupied nation. This is Syria. And look at the Iranian forces, the Russian forces, the Turkish forces. It's kind of hard to find the American ones until you get to the Northeast. But, man, does Syria control any of their own nation? It's just like Lebanon over here with all the foreign intervention. Iran and Turkey and Russia. So, all right, back to the blockade. Is this actually going to work? Well, let's go to our Strait of Hormuz tracker. We love to go to this every single episode. And, wow, 400 vessels waiting. One ship's going through. As you know, the Strait can hold at minimum 2 at any point, because the narrowest point is 21 nautical miles, and you can have 1 inbound, 1 outbound in that scenario. So 1 is 50% of the minimum capacity of the Strait. Now, as we've talked about, there is most likely a significant amount of transponder shenanigans going on. Let's turn off the transponder so that Iran doesn't know what we are doing. Let's go along the Omani side. So essentially the northern portion of the Gulf. And some call it Persian, some call it Arabian. We're just going to call it the Gulf and make both sides equally unhappy. Now, on the northern side of the Gulf, you got the Iranian route. And then on the southern end, this is the Omani route. Now, remember, the Iranians handle the inbound. The Omanis handle the outbound under their bilateral agreement. And worked out just fine until basically like less than 7 days. Because what happened was many ships were attacked in that time period. And even before that, you had the Minoan Pioneer, this Liberian-owned, Greek-managed ship. I believe it was 20 nautical miles east of Kasab, was struck around this peninsula. And eventually, because they were struck in the engine room, it caused a fire. It caused an oil spill in the Strait of Hormuz. The ship ended up drifting towards Keshem Island. And so just that alone increased the demonstrated risk within the Gulf, which is why the war risk premium is currently at 8.5%, which is 56 times the normal amount of 0.15. Now, the war risk premium is just an example of the demonstrated risk in the Strait of Hormuz and why it is tough for the Iranian economy in general. Now, what's funny is you don't really need to feel bad for them. They are always, like, perpetually trying to achieve the same goal in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They want to take away from the shipping in the Saudi Arabian route / Egyptian route because it goes up through the Suez Canal. So they want to harm Saudi Arabia principally, but even Egypt, by preventing shipping in this area. Whereas they want to entice shipping in their area. Well, when you have a demonstrated risk of 8.5%, and as we've talked about, it's been somewhere between 4 and 10% the whole time we've been tracking this. Well, it's been pretty much 8 to 10% since the oil spill. Very few. I think there was one time it was 5.5. Other than that, it's been 8 and up. That's very high. That can't help the Iranian people. Like I said, they've been takes 2 million Iranian rial to get $1 US. And part of that is from scarcity of goods. So you all know supply and demand. Their supply is out of whack, and their demand is normal, if not even higher, because the supply has been out of whack for so long. And so basic goods over in Iran, like cooking oil, etc., shooting up like a rocket. Like a rocket that they want to launch at the United States and Israel. But they are struggling. And will we see them get out of this? I must say, seeing the effect of the blockade of their blockade and the economic blockade has made me wonder, well, why didn't we do this earlier? And so I don't want to give Trump full credit for this, even if it and when it works, because it is clear that they should have pulled this trigger earlier. And ultimately, if you're not sanctioning China, we've covered this a lot, but Iran has approximately 40-ish billion in oil sales. Well over 30 of that is just China. And most of it is illicit oil trade. It is meant to avoid existing sanctions that are against the Iranian government. And so China has been propping up Iran for decades. If we can cut off that flow, maybe we would change the trajectory of this war. But it's easier said than done. And Trump, as we've critiqued before on the show, he talks a big game on China. But if you review his actions on China, far different than the Trump that he is positing himself. Oh, we're going to tax these MFers at 25%. Was essentially his entree, his foray into American politics in 2015. Yet, what did he actually do, especially during 2020? He was trying to save a trade deal with China that they end up not honoring anyways. So he looked pretty foolish. So I will give credit to the Trump administration. The blockade of their blockade has seemed to work. Their economic strangling of Iran has seemingly worked. But also, there are going to be many Americans who are going to be like, wow. So there was a solution to the Iran war, and it took you how many days? Let's review. 179 days. This has been going on for, when you get to 180 days, essentially 6 months, and there will be 6 months of economic pain for both people, Iran and America. And the Americans will rightly wonder, why don't we do this earlier? And are we even doing it now if we are not sanctioning China? So, much to consider. We will get into it at another date, but oh my God, it is late. So let's review the comments and wrap this one up. I'm schwitzing like an Airedale over here. Oh my. Yeah, I am very sweaty too. So, okay. Let me find the comments here. So we had some good ones. Ooh, yeah, we even got more to cover. Ah, So many to cover. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we had a fun comment or series of comments on the debunking communism propaganda about capitalism. Probably could have titled that a little cleaner. But, okay, so one, great. Now debunk capitalist propaganda in the next one. Now, I will say, I appreciate you, Butiga 7649. I appreciate your comment in the sense that hopefully you actually learned something from the debunking communism propaganda about capitalism and you weren't just on team communism side. But I will give you an example of where capitalism frustrates me. And that is in the form of planned obsolescence. Now, what is planned obsolescence? That is, instead of making something to last forever, the old joke is Maytag. You'll never see the Maytag guy if you get a Maytag washer or dryer. Well, many companies in the capitalist society found out, hey, making something that works forever is for the birds. Let's make something that you have to replace every 5 years. And the only way you can truly do that is if all the companies collude together and say, okay, we're all going to be part of this planned obsolescence plan. Now, we as consumers can disincentivize these companies from doing that by continuing to not support them. But it is hard, especially when these companies have a sterling reputation and they are riding upon that while they actually degrade their product. You're even seeing this with small things like Wendy's. Wendy's admitted that they cut back on their quality a lot, and now they have to do a lot to regain trust with their brand. So that is a very honest answer on capitalists, the limits, the struggles of capitalism, but ultimately, capitalism is far superior to communism, which has never worked. Capitalism works, including in supposed communist places like China, where it really is capitalist and all the positive aspects of it. The disappearing people for having a divergent opinion, that's the communist part. You try critiquing the Chinese Communist Party in any substantive way while you're in China, or when you first step foot into China after critiquing them for years, you will be disappeared. And this goes up to even the billionaires like Jack Ma. He got disappeared at one point. And then he came out shivering, shaking. I love Xi Jinping. I love the Chinese Communist Party. Don't disappear me again. So, yeah, not the best. Okay, we got one more from the same video. His explanation of socialism versus capitalism was very sharp. As a Democrat, I don't want to see Democrat socialists take over. We need more centrist goals and policies to move forward. That's a smart Democrat right there. Not against the Democrat Party. But against the Democrat Socialists. That is a smart Democrat. Okay. We got some Natalie Harp comments. So on the Natalie Harp hypocrisy video, I laid out the dilemma for Democrats, which is, are we going to depict Donald Trump as senile, or are we going to depict Donald Trump as virile, a sex-obsessed, banging out this 34-year-old, essentially secretary, your assistant, Natalie Harp? What is Trump doing? And to be honest, even as a Trump voter, I will tell you, he is far more in the senile than the virile camp. So it just sounds ridiculous when you're attacking a woman like that who's just doing her job. So I will say the Natalie Harp situation has gotten ridiculous because of Ossoff, and I agree with this comment. I don't agree with Ossoff about nature of their relationship being sexual. She's his biggest fan. She feeds his ego by looking for stories that make him look good. She is grateful about being in a medical trial that helped cure her. Now, there is some dispute on the timeline of this, but in the end, I can see why she still credits Trump for the ability for her to try experimental drugs, though there is some questioning on the timeline. In the end, I'm not going to quibble. I'm still going to give that to Trump and allow her to credit him for that. A few people said she sees him as Jesus. That alone would do it. The fact that people need to find a salacious angle is just tabloid fodder. The people on Abby Phillips' show reminded me of The View, for God's sakes. And the Ossoff Natalie Harp debate on this topic was wild. And we covered that in an episode. And the amount of talking over each other, it was close to a record on the show. And so I will like these comments. I think Natalie Harp is the human Trump centipede. Didn't even spell centipede right. Centipede. Ha 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 ha. So that's from Barry Britpop, and I appreciate the comment, but again, you're gonna have to pick one. Is he senile? Is he virile? Having sex with a 34-year-old. I mean, I did on the show. I always will lay out the case for either side. And on the liberal case, I must say, you hadn't seen Melania Trump for like a month. And so that's why she had to come out and even reference, oh, I heard you guys miss me, because you hadn't seen her for a while. So that coincidence certainly did lend itself to the camp of maybe he is virile, maybe he is pounding her out. But if you really have looked at him lately, even if you are the biggest Trump hater, you got to admit he looks more like he's old than he is pounding the puss. So, you know, it is, I think that one, strained credulity, it ended up harming John Ossoff more than it helped him, and I felt like it was a misstep. From a Democrat I do respect. I think John Ossoff is a Democrat to take seriously, except for the fact that he's Jewish, and having said yellow star on his chest will ultimately harm him. Nothing crazier. Oh, because this was on CNN and Fox agree on Iran. And this was a video where I showed you that on Fox and CNN, they were both declaring that the economic squeeze on Iran would be effective. And both networks were saying that this could end the war before the midterms, let alone before Trump's term ended, which is my initial prediction, which is that the Iranians clearly would want to turn Trump into Jimmy Carter. And if you remember, they waited essentially until January 20th, 1981. And there you go. That's when the switch off happened. So Reagan, when are you getting in? Okay. Well, then that's when we're going to actually negotiate on the hostage crisis. Well, I was predicting that this would be a very similar case for Trump. If he can't find a solution for this war, the Iranians would want to drag this out until the next term of the presidency, because they have been able to deal with sanctions for decades. But an economic D-Day would be a different story. Now, I must say, the D-Day labeling is ridiculous. And we've gone over this before, but you're comparing the world's largest amphibious assault to a threat of potentially placing sanctions upon countries after a certain warning and on specific timelines that vary for each country, it is not the same as D-Day. I don't remember in D-Day when they announced a potential invasion if countries do not cooperate with demands. So, okay. So back to your comment. Nothing crazier than hearing CNN and Fox agree on anything. This Democrat does believe Israel's army is a success story and a lesson for feminism all over the world. I convinced one person with this because, yes, Israel's army is essentially the only army where you see women in combat roles in a successful manner. And yet the most liberals will never cop to that because they have to give credit to dreaded Israel, which is on the oppression color chart. They're white, so they're bad. And we have to get into a clip tomorrow where Anna Kasparian was upset at the Ukrainians for fighting back, proving what I've been saying about the said color chart, which is Ukrainians, they're white, so they can't defend themselves. They have to be brown like the Palestinians for liberals to support their defense against Russia, which is a fascinating hypocrisy. So, but this is not a hypocritical Democrat. Nothing crazier than hearing CNN and Fox agree on anything. This Democrat does believe Israel's army is a success story and a lesson for feminism all over the world. It is a funny statement. Some people would not agree with that. Economic sanctions, and by some people I mean most of the Democrats, economic sanctions on China and Iran could be an excellent shortcut to end the war. Now, we will see if this actually occurs because, the liberal media likes to say the Trump taco thing is a thing. I even heard today that taco will be in the history books. I don't hear it anywhere outside of the media circles. But if Trump tacos on the China sanctions, then this is great branding for something that we're already doing. We've been doing for decades. So we'll see. We'll see. We have to actually sanction China, and I'm not going to believe this is going to work until we actually sanction China. Let's see. Any more comments? God, we really covered a lot today, and this is a top 5 longest episode ever. Okay, this is a good one. Stephen A. Smith receives thumb down award from NABJ. Hell no, we don't want Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate. We need apples to apples. Now, I must say, it might be a little foolish to throw the Kamala baby out with the bathwater when she is polling better than AOC head-to-head against Rubio and J.D. Vance. Now, against Rubio, she's probably Kamala still losing. But against J.D. Vance, and I did not realize this, Kamala kills J.D. And that shocked me. That did. I must say, I am as down on J.D. as anybody. I thought he would poll better than Kamala Harris in a head-to-head, and he did not. And J.D., the only victory J.D. had on the board was against AOC, which is funny to think that the Democrats are trying to prop up the weakest candidate for president that they have on the board. That's very interesting. And it is akin to what I've been saying about how they've misdiagnosed why they lost 2024 and why you're seeing the communists, the Democrats, Socialists of America, slowly attempt to take over the party because part of the misdiagnosis is, we need to move further to the left to win. And that was the lesson of 2024. They are misattributing the uncommitted vote, the people who stayed on the couch. They are misattributing that to the fact that, we need to move farther to the left. You needed to be farther to the left on one topic, Israel, and then you would have the Democrats would have reduced a lot of the uncommitteds. But for the rest of the issues, you need to move more to the center, especially culture war issue stuff. And when you have Abdul El-Sayed dying on the hill of transition surgeries, not where you want to be. So, okay. Do we have, and so, yeah, hell no, we don't want Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate. We need apples to apples. I do love that. I will say that's the one, that might be the one I disagree with the most, ironically. You know, I'm not a defender of Kamala, but the polling shows she is more potent than I realized. And I will say head-to-head polling is quite valuable because it removes a lot of the variables, a lot of the BS. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is certainly less imperfect than the others. Okay. And last one, I love this. This is the California new tire regulations video. And I wish we could have got into it today. We'll get into it tomorrow. The great Ashley Zavala reporting on this. And again, go follow Ashley Zavala for the latest in California news. Low resistance tires, do they stop better or does it take longer? How do they do in the rain? And that was from L Barrows 95. Robert Nasser 9937. A set of tires for my truck, 6 were original, were 2,000. Is that good? Wow. I replaced all 6 for 600. Mile has been the same. Interesting. Appreciate it. This is so stupid. Phase 2 is in 2033. I have way more important things to worry about in the state of the world. If we have to, we'll buy tires out of state, and this regulation is a waste of Democrats' time and energy. Now, I agree with that largely. I think that it's one of those things that makes them feel good short term, but in the long term, is it going to do anything? No. So, all right. Wow. It is nearly 1:30. I'm going to call it now. Now, there was a person who's been watching since around 12:05. Still watching. I want to thank you personally. Thank you so much. Sincerely. You kept me going on this very tough episode for me, having to do this on the anniversary of my grandma's death. But I know that she would be proud of me and everything that I've done. She would like me in a suit. She always loved me dressed up. And so I want to thank you all. This is not a fun day for me typically, but I was able to do stand up and to talk to you for multiple hours rather than think about my grandma's anniversary. So thank you all so much. And I feel like we honored her very well today, actually. And it was in the spirit of my grandma. So thank you, Grandma Rachel. Love you. And thank you to all of you who were able to watch this whole episode. I appreciate the person who had been watching for over an hour. You are the best. So this has been another episode of Eric Abbenante of God Bless America. I do this every 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Now, we might have to change the schedule up a little bit because of a new work opportunity that I am quite excited to take, but unfortunately, it is going to require a massive reduction in my autonomy of my own schedule. Long story short, we might have to just announce when the episodes will happen, and I'll keep you updated on that, but it's not going to be a consistent time as much. I'm going to try and get it every single night at a certain time. It just might have to be when I finish work. So it is what it is. But thank you to all of you. This has been another excellent episode of God Bless America. God bless all of you. I will see you tomorrow. Probably not tomorrow morning, 1:27. But God bless all of you. God bless America, and good night.